Hey guys, welcome to the channel. In this episode, I am going to show you how to load a spear gun on land and in water, and a few things that you want to look out for. Okay, so what we have here is a wooden traditional spear gun made on Lombok from 150-year-old wood that was part of a house, and it isn't going to change shape at all. Made by a friend of mine, and there's some details in the description here on how you might be able to find one on your own. And I'm going to show you a few things on how to load it on land. Later on I'll show you how to load it on water and some of the things to look for. First time that I ever went spearfishing, I used one that was very similar to this. I went with my friend Ollie, and he gave me about a 30-second demo and then sent me into the strongest current I had ever dove in, and ended up shooting himself a 26-kilogram tingiri. And I paid a lot of attention. I was able to load it quickly, but feel free to rewind this a few times and make sure you have it right. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, this gun is already set up in the correct fashion, but we're going to release the spear just as it's been shot. So you'll see there's a safety tip on here, and what that is just a band. There's a spike on here, it's just a little bit of safety. So when you shoot the gun, the spear comes out, okay? It goes out, and hopefully you've hit a fish, but if you haven't, you have to put your spear back in to the gun in a certain fashion so that it loads correctly. So the first thing that you're gonna do is you need to put the two rubbers, the two bands, on top, and you have the shooting line below, okay? So then you grab your shaft, which is here, and you load it down the track into the trigger mechanism. All right, and you're gonna hear a snap, a click that it's all set. Okay, and if you don't hear it, it's gonna slip out. So you can verify that it's secure by doing this, by wiggling it back and forth. That means that this trigger here is holding it, and that this mechanism, which is part of the trigger, also is secure. Okay, so next, I'm verifying that this loop here is pointed forward. It's not off to the side, it's not doubled back around. This will ensure for a straighter shot. Then I'm pulling most of the extra additional line that is coming from the shooting line that is coming from the shaft here through the rubbers. It should come through just once, all right? So I take that the first time, and usually to the left of the spear at the end of the shaft, at the end of the spear gun, is a little loop, okay? So I wrap it under there, once over the shaft, and then there's usually a notch to the right of the shaft. From there, I pull back, and I go over this metal bit here. This metal bit is attached to the trigger mechanism, and so when the trigger mechanism is released, so is this shooting line. So I pull it back up here once, okay, and then I end up with a loop here, and this loop goes back into this trigger mechanism. So this gun, it doesn't have any power on it just yet because the bands aren't loaded. This is where the power comes from. But this is the correct configuration on how you would shoot it. I would recommend that you do this several times before you go into the water, just so that you have it all set. Because when you're in the water, while loading the bands themselves is a little bit easier, sometimes seeing the line can be confusing, okay? So a safety recommendation and a tip for all of you is to not load your spear gun, not load the rubbers while on land. So in water, there's a ton of resistance. So when you're shooting your spear, all this water is slowing down the shaft, okay? But in the air, the particles are much more dispersed and there is very little resistance. That means the spear is shooting super fast, okay? So if I were to load these two bands on and shoot it on dry land, it's gonna end up hitting this length, you know? We have 4 times, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lengths of shooting line, and it's gonna snap because it's going so fast and recoil and come back and potentially hit me. So we'll never do that. Sometimes people want to see how well maybe if they change the rubbers, they fit onto the shaft and onto the gun. And what they will do, I don't usually do it, but what they will do is if they do want to load it on land, they will pour a little bit of water onto the bands right here. Because just the slightest little kink inside of one of the rubbers, you can see there's one here. One of these little kinks can be the start of breaking a band, okay? So, I'm not gonna fully load it, but what you will do is, if you have a 2-banded gun, you can see that one of the bands is furthest back. So this band here is furthest back toward the butt of the gun. So it will be the first. What you do is, I'm right hand dominant. I grab the rubber with my left hand. Then I grab the gun with my right hand and I pull. I set the butt of the gun into my chest. I get my second hand around the rubber and then I pull it back to the first shark fin, okay? Then I repeat the process with the second shark fin after the first one is all set. If I want a little bit more power, this gun has 2 shark fins. Actually, it has 3 shark fins. So what I can do is, I have it here. I load up the first one, and then if I want to bring it up to the next notch, the next shark fin, I bring up the butt of the gun a little bit higher, and then I'm able to get a little bit more leverage and bring it to the second or third shark fin. This just means more power when you're in the water. Okay, so that's the basics of how to get the gun set up. But remember, you're not loading these rubbers or leaving them loaded when you are on land. You're not pointing the tip of the spear at any of your Spearo buddies. Be very careful. It has a lot of power, a lot of potential to do harm, but if it's handled correctly, it can be quite safe. So after that, if you're in the water and you have set up already your gun, the setup here, when I shoot a fish, I end up letting go of my gun and just holding on to this line. There's a bunch of different configurations, but this is the most traditional. So with this one, I need a float. So basically what happens is I shoot a fish and then I let go of my gun and I swim to the surface. This is called the float line. This isn't a particularly long one. It might be used in more shallow water. It is about 13 or 15 meters and has a couple of key parts to it. So first, I really recommend these clips. They make life a lot easier. I use them as much as I can on both the end of the spear as well as the float. So first I'm going to attach it to one end of the float. And you can see how this piece right here really locks around the end of that rope. it's very secure, very strong. I've never lost a fish from one of these devices. Then the second part of the equation is this stringer piece. I really love these, and they're not super common, but they can be found. And the nice thing about this is if you catch a fish, if you are going for multiple fish, if you're not running back to the boat after each one that you catch, you are able to string them up. You take this stringer piece, you insert it through their gill and out their mouth, and what they do is they slowly slide down the distance of your float line and end up sitting at the back of your float. So then if there's sharks in the area, you don't have the fish on you on some kind of device that's on your body. They go after your float and it's much safer. So after I have that hooked up, I take this and I clip it to the end of the gun. And from there, I'm ready to rock. So the next part of this, I'll show you what to do in the water.
Oh.